If there is someone watching this podcast right now and they are not clear about their career
Yep.
and their path,
Yep.
what will you say to such a person?
I think a lot of times people spin their wheels because they don't align their skill set, their passion with their career. So people sometimes, I've seen this and I've tried this, where you see a particular job or maybe a company and you say, I really want to do that or be a part of that. And you don't consider, am I qualified or is my gifts aligned with that career? So I think the best thing to do is to really take a step back and really do a self-evaluation. What do I like to do? What am I passionate about? What are my gifts that God has given me? Because God gives everybody gifts.
Sure.
What is my skill set? And sometimes that takes time, and it also sometimes takes money, because you might have to go through a professional that kind of gives you like an outline of what you take like a evaluation of yourself, and then it kind of tells you this is what your skill set, and walk down that path. Because I think that a lot of times people think they're really good at something and they try it and they fail, and there's nothing wrong with not being an entrepreneur.
Yes.
I think sometimes people feel like if I don't do this certain job, then I'm a failure. Instead of saying, okay, that's not the job that I'm designed to do. I'm designed to do this. And if I do this and I'm good at it, then I'll be happier and I'm more content. Whether that's a farmer, whether that's a ditch digger,
Yep.
whether that's a real estate agent, a financial advisor, a medical professional, everybody has that. And sometimes you just have to really take a step back to be able to take a step forward. You got to really understand and be honest with yourself and be in tune with what is it that I am really good at or could be good at, and go and walk down that path. When I was in college, my freshman year of college, I was introduced to the Bible probably for the first time and studied the Bible and got baptized. I would say that was obviously when I became a Christian, a real Christian. Was very involved in the church that we were a part of. The minister of the church that I was very involved in said, we'll hire you as an intern and you can be part of the campus ministry, which you're familiar with because you just came out of that. You can kind of be a full-time ministry. That was the beginning of a 13-year. Learning the Bible helped me to really understand, okay, what does God really expect of me? What is it like to follow Jesus as a real Christian? And then that kind of going back to early on when I first started going to a Bible study, is I had to make a decision whether I really wanted it to be real.
A personal studying of the scripture yourself
Yeah.
is what led you to that part of transformation. So what led to you leaving the full-time ministry?
I'd say a couple things. One is that the church that I was a part of and the organization as a whole that the churches were a part of changed a lot. So oftentimes when an organization starts out and it has a vision or a goal, it kind of loses focus. It loses its way after a while. And when it becomes big and it becomes powerful and it becomes more about getting bigger and getting more powerful than it does about what the original intent was, which was to, as a church, to really help people and minister to people. I felt like I was competing with other people, my other colleagues, to try to advance. This guy is in a higher position than me. I've got to catch him. I've got to grow my ministry faster than he's growing his ministry. It was not pure anymore in my opinion. This is a strong word, but it kind of became corrupted. Yeah, it became a little bit corrupted, and I really lost a lot of respect and a lot of desire. I never wanted to leave God, leave the Lord, but I didn't have to be in the full-time ministry to serve God.
Welcome to the Voyage, the trials, transitions, and triumph. And today, we are sitting down with someone whose path has taken him from the quiet calling of full-time ministry to building businesses. Raising a family, over 3 decades of marriage, that is no joke at all, right? And is now, guiding physicians and families towards a retirement where their money outlive them, a financial advisor, and not just the other way around. Dean grew up watching his father navigate the high-stakes world of professional golf and entrepreneurship. He spent 13 years pouring himself into full-time ministry. Then, life shifted. He felt a new pull through circumstances to use those same gifts of teaching and caring for people in a different arena, helping high-achieving professionals to protect what matters most to them. And along the way, just like everybody else, there have been seasons of triumphs in family and faith, and also quiet struggles. And definitely a few hard lessons learned in business as well, but also a steady commitment to putting God and family first, even when ambition called loudly. Today, we will go deep into those turns and transitions and trials and triumph. The moment of doubt, the redirections, and the realizations that still shape him today. Dean, thank you for accepting the invite to be a guest on the voyage. And let's get into your story. It is going to be exciting and fun. This is the voyage, and this is going to be very fun and exciting. So let's just dive straight into our conversation. So, Dean, I'm sure you will be surprised at some of my questions that how did I dig in to find some of these things about you, right? But let's dive in and see what we can get and what people will learn from our conversation today. So, you grew up in upstate New York.
Correct.
All right. So, Dean, share with us what life was like in New York. Take me back. You are over 60 right now, right?
60. I'm 60.
60.
Yeah.
Wow. Man.
Yes, my birthday was in October, so I guess I am over 60, but not by much.
But you don't look it. You don't look it at all. So take me back. What was life like growing up in upstate New York? What are some of the things that shape your life growing up?
Okay. So one of the things I'll say is that upstate New York is very different than what people traditionally think of as New York.
Okay.
When I first went to college in North Carolina, this is back in 1985, when you tell people you're from New York, everybody assumes that it's New York City. And a lot of people don't understand the geography of what New York is like, but most of New York is very rural and hilly and much like Tennessee. And so when people say, well, what's the big city like? I had only been to New York City maybe 3 times in my entire life.
Really?
Growing up, yeah. So I didn't know much about New York City. So I grew up in a small town, and we actually moved around a lot. My dad was a golf professional. We lived in different cities with his occupation, but they were all small towns. I lived in Atlanta one time, and I guess I've lived in Miami, but all the towns I've lived in after I moved down to New York were way, way bigger than what I lived in growing up. So I grew up maybe a town that was as big as Columbia, Tennessee. So it wasn't very a big town. Pretty much everybody knew each other. Weather-wise, obviously lots of cold in the winter, long winters, short periods of nice weather in the summer and in the spring, but pretty average as far as how I grew up. We were a family that I think were of average means, didn't have a whole lot of money. There were times where we had more than other times, but pretty average growing up. Big into sports, since my dad was a golf professional. Grew up playing golf from a very, very early age. And in fact, at one point we owned 2 golf courses.
Oh, really?
So I was able to take advantage of the fact that when most people have to pay for golf and can only play once a year or once a week or once a month or whatever because of the expense, I played every day.
Wow.
So I got pretty good at playing golf because I had access to a golf course and play every day. My dad was a golf professional, so I had free lessons. So learned how to play the right way from a very early age. And so besides golf, I was very into baseball and football, although I was pretty small. So I wasn't a great football player, but loved baseball, loved golf. So basically grew up playing that, and as much as I could play, as much as I can get it, So in the summer when it was warm, I played golf every day or played baseball. So I loved playing those 2 sports.
So if I may cut you in there,
Sure.
are there some childhood experience or childhood event of life that when you reflect back now, you can refer to them as events of life that shape who you are now?
Yeah.
Can you share one or two?
Probably the fact that my dad worked a lot and I think he traveled quite a lot. So he wasn't around probably like a normal person's father would be. He played since he was a golf professional, played a lot of tournaments. So on the weekends, my dad was gone from sunup to sundown. I mean, I barely ever saw him on the weekends, as far as that's my perceptive. And then during the week, he'd be at the course working or giving lessons or traveling. So I think that way it affected myself was that I was pretty independent.
Oh, I'd say.
So I was very independent. So I did a lot of stuff, and back in the 70s, and especially in a more of a rural upstate New York city, because people knew each other, I think it was a very safe community. So we would go out and play all day long outside, get on our bikes, drive for miles, and mother never knew we were.
Wow.
Just come back later on, like at night, we'd be out all day long. And we lived on a lake, so we would fish. But so I think that part of growing up shaped, being independent and kind of self-sufficient, much more than I think today's society and the way kids are today, where, you have parents that are, have to be around their kids all the time, know where their kids are at all times. That wasn't the case. We were out and about, running around all day long, very independent. So I think that kind of helped me with independence. The fact that my dad had his own business kind of helped me to have that, I would say, entrepreneurial spirit.
I'd say.
So, always kind of scrapping to try to find a way to make money somehow, so always working at a restaurant, my dad's restaurant when I was a kid, caddying on the golf course, whatever, means I could figure out to make money, I kind of did. And so being independent and having a kind of an entrepreneurial spirit, I think that really had an impact on the kind of adult that I am.
Interesting. So, will you also say that knowing that your dad was in a sport, golf, which is a competitive game in itself, did that put any form of pressure on you to be competitive as well?
Yes. Yeah, for sure. So that's a good question. When you have sons, as you do, and you want your sons to excel and grow up and be better than you.
Yeah.
And so I think my dad's maybe dream or aspiration for me was to be a golf pro.
Really?
Yeah. So I played golf on the golf team, and I was young, and played in tournaments, like junior tournaments, kid tournaments. And even when I wanted to play other sports, my dad was a little bit dissuasive of that. Like, I know, don't, that'll ruin your golf swing. Or, you sure you want to do that? You might get hurt, it might affect golf. So it was always centered around, making sure that, I can focus on golf and being better at that game rather than, wrestling or football or baseball or any others, just run around outside. It was always, it was more about, golf than anything. So I guess just if I had to look back and think about, if you said, okay, what was the one thing that you can remember? I just remember our whole life centered around the golf business. It was always about golf, being at the golf course, going to tournaments, caddying in tournaments, watching golf. It was all about that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Not being a father and being a granddad now,
Yep.
reflecting on that, will you say your childhood was taken away from you? The fact that your life was immersed in your father's business and father's career?
No, I wouldn't say that. I think that it made it more fun. They gave us opportunities that other kids didn't have. I think other kids our age were kind of jealous of the fact that we got to play golf every day and be on a golf course. And, golf course is, it's a big mass of land, we have holes and greens, but on the course you have creeks and ponds and woods. And so as a young kid, it wasn't just about going to the golf course every day with my dad and playing golf. It was about exploring the creeks, fishing in the ponds, going out in the woods hunting for golf balls, getting on the golf carts and running around on the golf course, racing my brother in golf carts. I didn't feel like we missed out on anything. And if anything, it enhanced our experience of a kid growing up. There was so much more things to do being exposed to a golf community. It was like a country club, with a full restaurant and bar and a pool and tennis courts. So we had access to all that. So, at any given time on a good weather summer, it was either go to the pool, play tennis, play golf, go explore in the woods, go run around in the creek, go fish out of the ponds, go hunt for golf balls, terrorize people on golf carts. I mean, it was always something, but it was all around the golf community. In general, looking at my growing up, I thought it was a lot of fun.
Awesome. So when you compare that with the environment that kids grow up today,
Yeah.
where they are locked up in their parents' house,
Yeah.
playing games
Yeah.
on their phone, on their iPad, and you compare your outdoor environment of growing up, what is your thought and the impact of that? Just observing when you compare
Yeah.
the two experiences, what is your thought on that?
Obviously, technology today has changed people's lives, and we didn't have that growing up. It's okay, but there should be a balance. So I think, being outdoors all the time, as I look back, the experience is that you learn about nature, you get, the fresh air, you get hurt, you're on your own, out there running around. Even if today, people who grew up in rural areas on a farm or on a lot of land and be out and about, you become more independent. I think you learn more a sense of responsibility for things, whether it be animals or the outdoors or fixing things, than it is if you're just kind of cooped up inside all day long and playing video games and being distracted by technology. So I would say that I think it's a better opportunity for kids that if you're out and about.
Let's fast forward, to the time that you were now, I guess, finish high school, college, and all of that, and that you spend a good 13 years in full-time ministry.
Yep.
That was quite surprising to me. I said, really?
How'd you get all this information, by the way?
Well, that's my job to do. I have to
research.
I have to research about you, man. So tell me, Dane, what led you into a full-time ministry? Because that's like, really? Tell me, I'm curious.
Okay. Overarching the whole story, right, is you could say God did, right? God drew me. It's the Spirit of God, but a humanistic, practical perspective. When I was in college, my freshman year of college, I was introduced to the Bible, probably for the first time, and studied the Bible and got baptized. I would say that was obviously when I became a Christian, a real Christian. Was very involved in the church that we were a part of. Involved meaning we had a campus ministry and we had Bible studies that we did in the community center of our dorm. And so we would attend those every week, go to church every Sunday, just being involved with people on that level all during the week. So when I graduated college, my degree was criminology, criminal justice. What my career path at that time was thought to be was I was going to be a federal law enforcement.
Really?
Yeah, so I wanted to ultimately be an FBI agent. That's kind of what my goal was.
Interesting.
But the FBI, there's a minimum age requirement, which is 23. I graduated, I was like 19. So I had some years before I could even go into the FBI. But other law enforcement agencies, you can go in right out of college, like the DEA or the ATF or the state police or U.S. Customs or, any of these. So I applied with every one of those agencies. I applied with the Secret Service, the DEA, the U.S. Customs, the state police, everything I could think of that I felt qualified to do. But there was a hiring freeze on a government federal level at that time. This is 1985.
Interesting.
No, I'm sorry, 87. 88, somewhere around there. So there was a hiring freeze. So none of those agencies were hiring anybody. So there was a lag between when I graduated college and when I was going to be able to go into any of these things. So I was like, okay, I've got this time period. Who knows how long it's going to last? 3 months, 6 months, a year. I literally doing nothing. And I've got a degree in criminology. So what am I going to do with this? At the time, the minister of the church that I was very involved in said, we'll hire you as an intern.
Really?
And you can be part of the campus ministry, which you're familiar with because you just came out of that. You can kind of be the assistant to the campus minister and kind of help him whatever he needs while you're waiting to get a call from one of these agencies, to further the hiring process. So I didn't have a job, I needed to make money. I'm out of college now. My parents weren't supporting me. And I'm in North Carolina. I'm like, yeah, sounds good. Why not? Let's do it. That started that down that path of full-time ministry. And maybe about 6 or 8, or maybe a year into it, I'm like, I kind of like this.
Wow.
I don't think I want to go into law enforcement.
Really?
Yeah. And one of the other driving factors is that when you're on if you get accepted on a federal level to any one of these agencies, they can place you anywhere in the country. You could be, from Charlotte, North Carolina, that's where I was living, to Anchorage, Alaska, to, Fargo, Dakota, North Dakota, wherever that, South Dakota, anywhere. And I didn't want to live anywhere. I didn't want to raise a family in the Dakotas or out, in the middle of nowhere. So I love the South, and I wanted to stay in the South. So I'm like, I want to be more control of my destiny than be at the whim of whatever the government says. So I said, I think I'm going to give this ministry thing a shot. And so I did. And that was the beginning of a 13-year stint in the ministry, which took me to many different cities.
Wow.
That we lived in ministry. Took me international travel.
Okay.
I've spent some ministry time in South Africa.
Wow.
London, Paris, Brazil, Mexico City, all these places which were really incredible, fun places to travel and to meet people and to have the opportunity to minister to people in these other countries as a missionary, so to speak. So yeah, it was a great opportunity to, an expansion of my cultural experience.
So it wasn't that you went to a theological school or a Bible seminary to become a pastor? Oh, okay.
There was no formal training at all. It was simply, what do they call OTJ, on the job training?
Job training?
Yeah. Now, we studied the Bible. I mean, the church had a ministerial training. It wasn't an accredited
From our school.
Seminary school, nothing like theological. No, it was just studying the Bible, reading the Bible on your own. Again, just experience, kind of being an apprentice to a senior pastor.
Right.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier on that it was while you were in college that you were first introduced to the Bible.
Correct.
Walk me through that.
When I say introduced to the Bible, I mean, I grew up Catholic.
Oh.
So it's not like I'd never been to church before. Our family went to a Pentecostal church, and if you know what that, completely opposite from the Catholic Church. So I'd read the Bible a little bit, and been exposed to the Bible, but I never really, on my own, bought a Bible that I can understand, King James edition, but a NIV or an English that I could understand, and sat down and really read it with the intent that I want to learn this. How that happened was in college as a freshman, the campus ministry of that church that I was a part of had an individual that was the campus minister that held a Bible study group once a week, and just so happened to be in our dorm, the dorm that I was in. And I got an invitation. I just out and about. This guy just would go around and knock on people's doors. Hey, we're having a Bible study. Come down Thursdays at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock or whatever. And reached out to me, and I eventually went to one of those. I put it off for a long time, but I went. Actually, he bugged me enough where I just said, "This guy's never going to leave me alone. I just need to go." So I went, and then that started that journey of learning on my own.
Can you describe what you discovered about God during that phase of your time and about yourself?
Wow, that's a deep question. One thing I would say is that the Bible is not hard to understand or read. it seems kind of daunting when it's big, thick. Again, growing up in the Catholic Church, the Bible that I always was exposed, the version I was exposed to was King James. So it's a lot of these and thous and stuff that I didn't understand. I bought a Bible that is in common English, everyday English, a more modern version. It was very simple to learn it and understand it, and it really read like a novel, and I really got interested in it. And and as the more I read it, the more it was interesting to me, the more I wanted to learn, and it just became a snowball. And so the more I read, the more I wanted to read, the more I learned, the more I wanted to learn more. And I think what I learned about myself was that I was nowhere near living a Christian life.
Really?
Thought I was a Christian, yeah.
Wow.
I didn't know the Bible. And I'll say this to this day. I think the highest form of illiteracy is biblical illiteracy.
Really?
Yeah, I think most people do not understand the Bible or know the Bible. Now, I'd say in the South, a lot of people go to church.
Yeah.
And so they hear biblical teaching. They may hear a scripture in the service, but outside of the service,
That's it.
that's it. Like going home and literally every day reading the Bible and studying and taking notes and trying to learn the background. From my experience, most people don't do that.
Wow.
And so the things that I thought were God's, law or the way to live were not.
Wow.
Because again, my perspective was the Catholic Church. And so a lot of the stuff that I learned was from that perspective, which a lot of it is just rooted in tradition. It's not really biblical. And so learning the Bible helped me to really understand, okay, what does God really expect of me? What is it like to follow Jesus as a real Christian? And then that kind of going back to early on when I first started going to a Bible study, is I had to make a decision whether I really wanted to be real.
Wow.
I wasn't going to be a fake Christian. I wasn't going to be a pseudo-Christian. There were a lot of different campus ministries at the time on University of North Carolina, where I went to college. One of the big ones was like the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, FCA. And some of the classes I had a lot of these guys, these FCA, the student athletes in my class.
Okay.
And they were part of this group. But I saw this is before I was a Christian. This is before I started studying the Bible. This is just when I was just a freshman party, in a fraternity partying. And these were the same guys that would go to the parties with me, same guys that would, running around with women and having sex before marriage, getting drunk. I mean, their life looked nothing like what the Bible describes as a Christian. It was just like this. They were just like me.
Wow.
There was no difference between my lifestyle and theirs, yet they were saying they were Christian. At least I was saying, I'm not a Christian.
Right.
I mean, this is not, you can call yourself whatever you want, but you're not living like a Christian. I know I'm not living like a Christian, but I'm not trying to, I'm not, yeah. So when I decided I really was wanting to be one, I was like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to be serious.
Wow.
And so I think that's when you asked about change, that's what changed is I decided if I'm going to pursue this Christianity and being a disciple of Jesus, then I'm really going to do it. I'm really going to be serious about it. And it's not going to be easy. And I'm going to lose friends, and I'm going to completely change my lifestyle to align myself with what God wants, not with what I want. And so that's what happened. And so that's what really changed me.
A personal studying of the scripture yourself
Yeah.
is what led you to that part of transformation.
And having other people in your life. I mean, it's hard. You can't, you're not an island. You can't do it on your own. So being in a community or a fellowship, if you will, of other young people, that can walk alongside you and help. That's what changed.
And it is intriguing to me when you mentioned earlier that the highest form of illiteracy today, it is biblical literacy. But you see, the Bible is in different formats. Information is widely available and accessible, but yet people still have a lack of knowledge and understanding of what is in the book.
Yeah, true.
That is quite thought-provoking to me. And the fact that, which I see the challenge there, that people will claim to be Christians, but then their lifestyle is completely opposite of what they claim to be.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
So if we take the step further in your journey, so what led to you leaving the full-time ministry? What was responsible for that?
That's another great question. I think I'd say a couple things. One is that the church that I was a part of and the organization as a whole that the churches were a part of changed a lot. And let me say this. So oftentimes when an organization starts out and it has a vision or a a goal,
Yeah.
it kind of loses focus. It loses its way after a while. And when it becomes big and it becomes powerful and it becomes more about getting bigger and getting more powerful than it does about what the original intent was, which was to obviously, as a church to really help people and minister to people. I felt like the organization I was a part of, the church, just became about numbers, and it became about money and people in positions like I was in, advancing and being, going from a small church to a medium church to a mega church, being a pastor of thousands, and and having that notoriety and writing books and fame, and and that's not why I did it. And I felt like I was competing with other people, my other colleagues, to try to advance.
Really?
Yeah, I felt like I was like, okay, this guy is in a higher position than me. I've got to catch him. I've got to grow my ministry faster than he's grown his ministry. I've got to have more people than he's got. My contributions, I've got to get the contribution up to this level. And I was like, it was not pure anymore in my opinion. It was more, this is a strong word, but it kind of became corrupted. Yeah, it became a little bit corrupted. And I really lost a lot of respect and a lot of desire to be part of anything like that. And so I never wanted to leave God and leave the Lord. I mean, that's a given, but I didn't have to be in the full-time ministry to serve God. So I could step away and get out of the ministry, get a secular job, and still have impact on people's lives, and minister. I didn't have to be full-time in the ministry to do that. That was the main reason. And we had moved so many times. I think I'd counted up to that point before I quit the ministry. I think we had moved like 17 or 20 times.
Wow.
Different cities and places with it, and I was like, and this time my kids were in middle school, and I was like, I'm not going to move my kids anymore. All different, like, I don't want them moving all around all the time. Like I want to establish some roots here in Nashville, and so I want to just stay here.
Wow.
That was the biggest thing that led to leaving.
The corruption that you observed, that you
Yeah.
did not want to be part of within the church system, made you to leave.
Yes.
Do you still see the same level of corruption, the same level of competition, even as an outsider looking in right now?
Yeah, I got to be careful because I don't want to come across as judgmental, because I don't know the insides of all the different churches. From my experience in the church that I was a part of, I saw that.
Wow.
And I didn't want to be a part of that. So what happens in other churches, maybe, possibly, probably, you see some of the stuff going on, but I wanted to be a regular member, like what you don't know can't hurt you.
What it can hurt you.
Even in the church that I'm a part of now, several years ago, I was asked to train to be an elder.
Yeah.
So I said, yeah, that sounds like a noble endeavor, so I started on this year and a half long elder training program, and the more I got into it, I felt like it was the same thing. I felt like people jostling for position and all this stuff that goes on, church politics. I don't want any part of. I'm like, I'm over that. I just want to be a regular member, help, be active. And whatever my gifts are, I'll serve to that capacity in the church, but I don't need to be paid by the church ever again. I don't need to be in any high position of authority or leadership. I just want to
Just do your thing and
just
leave.
do my thing. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, how did you now find your way to become a financial advisor?
The quick story is, after being in the ministry, for 13 years and really pretty much right out of college, I never really had a secular job, so I didn't really know what I was going to be good at or what should I do. I wasn't sure. Am I good at anything other than being a minister? Am I good at sales? I mean, I'm not an engineer. I don't have a professional degree like medical or, science or engineering, anything like that, or law. So I got into sales, and then I worked my way up in different roles in different companies and eventually got into medical sales. But I also, one of the things along this journey from very early on, even when I was in high school, I loved the stock market. I always kind of, wanted to invest as a kid. When the internet became available, I was probably in my early 20s, I think, and I got an online trading account and started investing and trading in stocks,
Wow.
companies. And there were some times I did really, really well. And I mean, there were times where I made more money in a day than I did in a year. And then there are times I lost more money in a day than I made in a year. Again, I didn't know what I was doing, but it was just cool. It was fun, and I liked it. So that was the roll around the back of my head that I kind of like being a stockbroker, if I could ever do that. But I was in medical sales. So one of the last medical sales jobs I had, I called on physicians and I helped them to generate income for their practice, generate revenue for their practice. It was a program that this particular medical company had. And so that put me on the same side of the table as the physician. So I wasn't just a rep selling drugs or selling, I was actually selling a program that would help them increase revenue.
I'd say.
So I was into their finances as their business. And so when, there was a point where the medical sales, I kind of got burnt out on that. And I'm like, okay, what can I do? I love financial stuff. I love helping people make money. I love people managing money. I love the stock market. And so I said, I'm not too old to do this. This was probably when I was 50 something.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I had some friends that worked for a broker in Nashville, and they kind of recruited me. And so that led to me getting hired by that same company. And that's what got me into it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So looking at your journey and transitions in life, you studied criminal justice, and you started maybe your first real job, so to say, as a full-time ministry. You went into medical sales and now a financial advisor. If there is someone watching this podcast right now and they are not clear about their career
Yep.
and their path,
Yep.
what will you say to such a person?
I think a lot of times people spin their wheels because they don't align their skill set, their passion with their career. So people sometimes, I've seen this and I've tried this, where you see a particular job or maybe a company and you say, I really want to do that or be a part of that. And you don't consider, am I qualified, or is my gifts aligned with that career? So I think the best thing to do is to really take a step back and really do a self-evaluation. What do I like to do? What am I passionate about? What are my gifts that God has given me? Because God gives everybody gifts.
Sure.
What is my skill set? And, sometimes that takes time, and it also sometimes takes money, because you might have to go through a professional that kind of gives you your, like an outline of what you take like a evaluation of yourself, and then it kind of tells you this is what your skill set, and walk down that path. Because I think that a lot of times people think they're really good at something and they try it and they fail and they feel frustrated, but it's like, that's because that's not what your skill set is. In other words, give you an example, especially in today's day and age, being an entrepreneur or working for yourself, it's a big deal.
Yes.
Right. And I think a lot of times people fancy themselves as, I'm an entrepreneur, I want to do it, but they do not have an entrepreneurial
Skill set
or spirit about them or a background. And so they fail again and again and again and again. And they get frustrated, and they're like, why am I, not further along? Well, it's because you're not cut out to be an entrepreneur. That's not your skill set. And there's nothing wrong with not being an entrepreneur.
Yes.
I think sometimes people feel like, if I don't do this certain job, then I'm a failure. Instead of saying, okay, that's not the job that I'm designed to do. I'm designed to do this. And if I do this and I'm good at it, then I'll be happier and I'm more content. Whether that's a farmer, whether that's a ditch digger,
Yep.
Whether that's a real estate agent, a financial advisor, a medical professional, everybody has that. And sometimes you just have to really take a step back to be able to take a step forward. You got to really understand and be honest with yourself and be in tune with what is it that I am really good at or could be good at, and go and walk down that path.
Interesting.
Yeah. So for me, I think the whole thing about being in the ministry, I'll say this, another thing about that is that looking back at it, I don't think I was so much cut out for the ministry as the people that were in leadership position looked at me and said, oh, this guy should be a good leader. He's sharp. He should be really good. In my heart of hearts, did I really want to do that? Not really. But I felt like that's what I should do.
Wow.
I felt like that's what everybody expected of me. And so I should probably do this. But I always felt like a square peg in a round hole, or a round hole peg in a square hole, whatever. I didn't feel like I really fit it perfect. And so I was always a little bit frustrated in that role and a little bit disappointed in myself and not real happy. I think I tried to force it too much. When I actually got honest and said, you know what, I'm not cut out for this. This is not my heart to be this. I got to figure something out. And that's where I kind of got into the other paths.
So what is your thought on when people that love us, as parents, as teachers, have certain level of expectation, and people wants to live up to those expectations, and those expectation even becomes pressure and
Yes.
demands.
Yes.
How can people manage that? One, from people that want to put these expectations on others, and the recipient of those pressures and expectations that will now shape their path and their journey in life. I mean, it is sad because people are doing it with good intention, but the outcome is not always good.
When you're talking about somebody who is maybe putting pressure on someone else, it's probably the best example is, or what you're thinking is, you're a parent and for your kids, right?
Yeah.
Because you want your kids to be successful, you want them to have a good life, you want them to be happy. And so I think there's a fine line in pushing them to be the best version of themselves and pushing them to be something they weren't meant to be. So I feel like I could have been pushed more. I wish my parents would have pushed me more to do a certain thing, but to be a better version of who I am. So in other words, we all have a capacity. And, if you think about it from a physical standpoint, if you're running or you're doing something, aerobic, swimming, running, lifting weights or whatever, there's always a point where you say, I can't do it anymore, but you really can. You're just not pushing yourself hard enough, right? So you need somebody in there just driving you, pushing you, not to the point of where you're hurting or you get hurt, but that you can do more than what you think you can do. So there's that level of being pushed or being coached or have an expectation. And I think that's a good positive thing.
Okay.
I think the negative is where if you are a parent and you want your son to be a lawyer, it's like, I want you to be successful, and I want you to be a lawyer, and I want you to be a professional in that respect. And I don't think, your career path that you chose is the right one. I think you should do this. I think you should, and just pressuring. That's where I think you cross the line. I think that's wrong to do that. I think that if you have a son or if you have a daughter, again, figure out what is it their gift is, what is their passion, and then help push them for that, to that end. Not to be a specific thing that you want them to be. And then on the other end of that, you said for yourself, right? You said something about, and I'd say that it's sort of the same thing, is that pushing, going beyond what you think you can do and just going a little bit further. So that's always the thing, is that, like even right now as an adult, as a professional career for 15 years, there are times where I feel like, okay, I make good money. I don't need any more money to live. I'm living a very comfortable life. So is it okay to sort of be content, or is that coasting? I don't want to coast. I want to have ambition. I want to have drive, but I don't want to do that to the detriment of other things. I don't want to be greedy. I don't want to overwork where I'm neglecting family and whatever. So again, there's a point where I want to push myself as hard as I can and have ambition, but I don't want to do it to the detriment of living my life.
All right. So talking about money, being a financial advisor, what is one truth about money that people refuse to admit, but that actually costs people a lot in the long run of it? We come to the end of our session today. Thank you, then. This has been
Thank you.
fun and exciting.
Thank you.